Hey guys, Jexie here. Welcome back to another video. So today's video, I want to talk about the idea of relapse and whether the rewired soul was admitting to the fact that he relapsed and what exactly does it mean to relapse in recovery? Does it mean you use your drug of choice? Does it mean taking somebody else's medication? Does it mean drinking? What does it mean and how do we determine that for ourselves? Okay, so the first thing that's really important that I make clear is that it is not our job as people in recovery to judge anybody else's recovery. Excuse me. You guys know that I'm a really big advocate for that it doesn't matter, we don't judge anybody. As somebody who goes to NA, I can also tell you that if a person was to walk up with like a needle sticking out of their arm and said they were celebrating 6 years clean, nobody would question that. People in NA would just tell them to keep coming back. So I want it to be very clear that I am now in no way trying to judge the Rewired Soul's recovery or to say whether or not he actually relapsed. But I think this is a really important topic for us to discuss because it's something that may come up in our own recoveries, and understanding where our own boundaries are matters. So for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, the Rewired Soul did a video the other day where he talked about running out of his Prozac. If you don't know, Prozac is an antidepressant. The Rewired Soul says he takes it for anxiety issues. He had shared that he had been on Lexapro for quite some time, and then he was changed over to Prozac because he had had some side effects. Well, he said something about not having health insurance, being in limbo, whatever. And he also mentioned that he doesn't see a psychiatrist. That may not matter in the grand scheme of this discussion, but it may matter to in the sense of what we're talking about. So he did not make an appointment to see his doctor for whatever reason, and he ran out of his Prozac. So what he decided to do was he had been holding on to a bottle of his Lexapro that he was no longer prescribed. Now remember, he was no longer prescribed the Lexapro because of the side effects. Although they are the same category of medications, they're both antidepressants, the fact is he was no longer prescribed the Lexapro and decided to take it anyway, even though no doctor told him to do so. He did so in what would generally be considered pretty dangerous fashion. I know from my own experience, I've shared this with you guys before. Maybe I'll actually do a video on my experience. I was on both of those medications and I did transfer from one to the other. I actually transferred from Prozac to Lexapro last year when I tried to take medication for my own seasonal affective disorder. And I had really bad side effects in regards to tapering off when I finally got off the Lexapro completely. And so I can tell you from my own experience and what you can read online that these messing around with medications like that is dangerous and should never ever be done. So look, if you're on, just a disclaimer, if you are on any medication or anything, please, please, please never ever ever take suggestions of people who are not your doctor. If someone tells you to hold stores of old medications, as someone in recovery, I will tell you that is a really bad idea. But anyway, none of that is relevant. What I wanted to talk about is the fact that he discussed the idea that it was a totally acceptable practice for a recovering addict to take a medication that was no longer prescribed to them. Now, this is something that worries me. A lot of people have very different opinions on this. I can tell you my own, and I'd really, really like to have a discussion about this. So please, once we talk about this a little bit, I would love to further this conversation in the comments. I would also love to chat about this in my Discord. You can specifically choose like the According to Jexie channel to discuss this, but I think it's a really good topic. So I've heard a lot of different opinions on what it means to relapse. My idea of being clean and being in recovery is staying off any mind or mood altering substances. I don't account that for doctor prescribed medications as long as that doctor is 100% familiar with the fact that I'm an addict. For example, if I'm hurt and I go to a doctor and they prescribe me some type of pain med and I take it and they don't know I'm in recovery, that's a problem. But if I break my leg in a car accident and a doctor knows I'm in recovery and says, you really need this medication, that's a different thing. So for me, that's a very clear line. A doctor must know that I'm in recovery, and I also make sure that I talk to other people in recovery as well. I do this for my own safety. There have been times where it would have been appropriate for me to be prescribed pain medication, and I chose not to take those prescriptions. I was in fairly early recovery, and I got a tooth pulled, and I had a root canal or something. I've had all sorts. As you guys know, my teeth are a mess. And I told the doctor I didn't want pain meds, and he said, if you may need them, so come back if you do. And I was in excruciating pain. But I took the ibuprofen to try it first. I drove a half hour away and figured if it was still in pain then, I'd turn around and come back. So anyway, I don't want to make this video ridiculously long. But the reason I say, did the Rewired Soul relapse, is most people in recovery will tell you that taking medication that is not prescribed to you would constitute a relapse, regardless of what that medication is. A relapse, for example, I'm an opioid addict, but if I went and smoked pot, people would consider that a relapse. If I went to the bar and drank, people would consider that a relapse. And most importantly, I would consider that a relapse, right? So it is one thing to keep extra medication of what you are currently prescribed in case your doctor's appointment gets pushed, there's a snowstorm, they're closed down, you have a flat tire, you get sick, right? Having a couple of extra of whatever medication you take is not necessarily a bad thing. But holding on to medications that you are no longer prescribed. In fact, remember, these were no longer prescribed because of negative side effects. And I had an old sponsor when I first got into recovery, and she was telling me a story about her sponsor. And she said that someone she knew in recovery had to take pain medications because they had some sort of massive surgery. And the sponsor was aware, and she did it carefully. And the woman said that she started to watch the clock for when her next dose was due. And her sponsor considered that a relapse, which I personally think is crazy, right? But the idea is, I think it's really, really important that we identify what constitutes a relapse for us. Because if I went and took medications that were no longer prescribed to me, most of the people in my program would consider that a relapse. I know that the Rewired Soul is not actively working a recovery program anymore. And apparently, according to him, he's not even seeing a psychiatrist. He gets his meds from a medical doctor. So as far as I know, he's not actively working a recovery program. And again, that's on him. I'm not judging. But the reason that we suggest that people actively work recovery programs is because it is so easy for us as drug addicts to convince ourselves that something is a good idea. If I had a leftover bottle of medication and look, you guys know I suffer from seasonal affective disorder. I have a really, really hard time with depression in the winter. This season, I am not taking antidepressants because I had a really hard time with side effects of them last year and decided that I would try to do something different this year, such as going to the gym, getting a light box, and just really talking about it regularly with people and to see if I can get through it. It may not be possible. I may need medication, but I really struggled with the side effects of the withdrawals when I came off of it last year. And I didn't feel like the benefits outweighed that really hard withdrawal. So that's why I didn't do it for this year. But again, it's under doctor's orders and I communicate with my doctor regularly. So if that were to change, then, we'll deal with that when it comes. But I don't know. I think it's really not a great suggestion to make to an audience that is made up of a lot of vulnerable people that it's okay to take past medications. I ask, if you took medication, let's say I used to be prescribed something, right? And I felt like I needed it. And I didn't want to go to the doctor and take it. And I didn't have any left, but my mom had some. Is it okay for me to take her meds? Is that acceptable, or is that a relapse? Now, look, nobody can answer these questions, right? I'm not telling you there's one right way to look at any of it. But I think it's important that when you're in recovery, you know your line, that you know how you feel about that, and you know how you feel about it before it comes up. Because if you're saying it is not okay to take medications I am no longer prescribed, and then down the road you find yourself taking medications that you're no longer prescribed, that's using behavior. And if you don't think that's a relapse, it definitely puts you closer to an actual relapse, right? But changing your ideas of what it means to be in recovery to suit your needs and your mood at the time is a very dangerous place for any addict to be in. And look, I'm not coming from an all-knowing place, right? Like I don't have all the answers. I really don't. And like I'm not saying like, "Oh, he relapsed," right? Like cuz that's not my job to say. But I think we need to be really careful for ourselves and determine what do we constitute as a relapse? How do we handle medications? Do we make those decisions without talking to a doctor? Do we make those decisions without talking to other people in recovery? How do we know? How do we know that those types of choices we're making are actually the best choices for us and not our disease telling us if that's a good idea? So again, tell me what you think. What do you think? Do you think that that's a relapse for yourself, not for him? Just, I want to be clear one more time about this. This is not, do you think the Rewired Soul relapsed? My question to you is, do you think if you did that, you would consider it a relapse? I think that we need to make sure we keep the conversation on ourselves. It's real easy to judge somebody else and to make fault at somebody else. But if we're going to have a real conversation about this, I think we need to talk about it in terms of ourselves and our own recovery. I think that's how we keep it in a positive light. If you haven't joined my Discord, the link is in the description. Please do. The next thing I'm doing after I record this video is I'm finally making the tutorial video about my Discord because there's so much cool stuff that just like people don't know is there. Feel free to invite anybody. It's open. I would love to just have people. They can be in recovery. They don't have to be. If you have a YouTube channel and you want to have a greater role in my Discord, have your own chat, have your videos show up, let me know. If you could like this video, if you think it deserves it, that would be great. If you're new, again, welcome to my channel. Please subscribe. It helps me so much. Patreon links are in the description. We do trivia every Wednesdays. We have a lot going on here. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. And again, I really, really look forward to hearing your thoughts. And yeah, I'll catch you next one. Bye, guys.